SAS demonstration video formats. For this demonstration video, we are going to again use the Owen dataset that was used in the missing value code demonstration video. So we are going to read in the 1006 observations from the dataset Owen.dat, and we are already going to replace the missing value codes, the 99s and 999s, with periods. But we want to also see if we can make our output more readable. In this demonstration, we are going to look at how value labels and variable labels improve readability. So let's first take a look at the program with no formats or labels. So we're just going to run this code, and we're going to do some frequencies and means on the data when there are no value labels or formats, and take a look at the output. So we're going to run a proc freq and a proc mean on this data for selected variables. And we see here that we have a frequency of gender, race, and child num, and mom's age. And the problem is that with these codes for gender and race and child num, we have no idea what they mean. Does one equal male? Does one equal female? Does one equal white? Does one equal Hispanic? We don't know. Mot age, again, we're not really clear. What does mot age? Who is that? We don't know what that variable means if we were not very familiar with this data set. And again, if we look at our proc means and we see the different variables, we don't really know what does B weight stand for, what does income-C stand for. So we can make our output more readable by adding formats and labels. First of all, I'm going to talk about labels, and then I'm going to talk about formats. So labels are used to make variable names more understandable. So if we have a variable name such as famnum, we can create a label for it like family ID. The way to add labels to our variable names is with the label statement. And notice that you can list a bunch of different variables and their labels in one SAS label statement. And so here we've attached a label to the variable famnum called family ID. We've attached the label child number to the variable child num, age and months to the variable age, and all the way down to here mother's age at birth to the variable mot age. And so when we next run this code, instead of just seeing these labels that aren't very informative, we now will see these labels that are attached to the variables, making the variables more informative. Now the other thing we want to address is what are the meaning of the codes. And so we're going to use formats to actually attach values to the coding of these variables. So here we have created, for example, a format called sexFMT, standing for sex format, where 1 equals male and 2 equals female. We've created a format for race format, where 1 equals white and 2 equals black. Notice that for each of the formats that we are creating, these are separate SAS statements. Each format is a separate SAS statement where we're assigning what each code is equal to. And so the assignment is presented in quotes. It could be presented in double quotes or in single quotes. The last format that I am creating is called A group. And we're saying that if age is under 20, or going from the youngest age to 19, we're going to call it less than 20. If age is between 20 and 24, then we're going to give it a label 20 to 24. And so forth when we get to if age is 40, all the way to the person who's the oldest age in the data set, we are going to give it the value label greater than or equal to 40. So this is a format that we can attach to age so that when age is printed out in our output, it's going to actually appear in these categories, even though age continues to be a continuous variable. So now that we've created these formats, these are user-defined formats, how do we make sure that they are attached to our variables? We do this with a format statement. So let's continue down through our program So we've got our program where we've read in our data, input our variables, given them labels, and then we've corrected our missing values. So now what we want to do is we want to attach a format to these variables. So here, when we do a proc freak of gender, race, child num, socioeconomic class, and mother's age, we are going to now attach a format to them. And so we have a format statement, and we want the sex format to go with sex. So we list sex and then sex format with a period. So remember, formats always end in a period. And then we're going to attach the race format to race. And we're going to attach the child format to child num and the age format, A group, to mot age. So when we look at our output and we see a frequency of mot age, it's actually going to appear as if they were grouped. The other thing I want to point out is that when we do our proc print, we want our data to show up with the labels as column headings. And in order to do that, we need to include a label option with proc print. So our proc print is now going to show up with the labels as column headings, and we're going to only read in the first observations from the data set. And then with proc means, we're actually going to be doing a proc means by gender, and we want to show that gender has a format attached to it, so we have a format in our proc means statement. So again, when you have a format statement within a procedure, the formats are only shown for that procedure. So we want to add a format statement to proc means, so it's also shown within proc means. So let's go ahead. We need to run all of this code, including the proc format, and see how our output looks as a result of it. Okay, let's scroll up to the very beginning here, where we have our result of proc print. So notice now we have 5 observations and how much easier it is to read this output. We have a list. We know that the first variable is family ID, the second variable is child number, and these are labels that make sense so that if you were not familiar with the data set, that you would be able to understand this output more clearly. Now if we page down and we look at the frequency distribution, we see here that sex has a coding of male and female instead of a 1 and a 2. So now the value labels come up rather than the value codes. Race, we have white and black. Child num, so child num gives your rank in the family, whether you're the oldest in the family, the next oldest, or the youngest. And notice here that we now have displayed the variable label child number. So if a label was created for that variable, it would show up right above the frequency table. We did not create a label for race or sex, so we have no label for that variable displayed for those frequency distributions. And here we see socioeconomic status. The label for W rank appears above the frequency table for W rank. Mother's age at birth is the label for mot age, and notice that mother's age is now not displayed as a continuous variable, but it's displayed in categories, less than 20, 20 to 24. Mot age is still a continuous variable, but because we've attached this format, it appears categorized for the output. And then finally, here you see our means with the labels shown. And so again, I want to point out that mot age, mother's age at birth, is actually a continuous variable. But when we added the format to it, it came out as if it was categorized. So that's kind of interesting. Notice then the data is being displayed by gender, and it's shown as males and females, not 1s and 2s. And again, we have the label income per capita, so we know exactly what this variable means. We have birth weight, so we know exactly what B weight means. In the previous example, we had our format statements within each procedure. In this last example, I'm showing you that you can actually have a single format that's within the data step, and it will apply to all the procedures following. So if I have one format statement within the data step, for every procedure that's run subsequently, those formats are going to be displayed. And I kind of like that because then I don't have to type in an additional format statement in every procedure that I run. I prefer to have the format placed at one time within the data step and then have it show up in all the subsequent procedures. So the code is exactly the same. We start out with our proc format, and we have our label statement and set up our missing value codes, and then we have our format statement within the data step. And then notice that in the procedures, we no longer have any format statements. The other thing I want to point out is that in general, when I'm creating formats for my variables, I always put the proc format above the creation of the temporary data step. So basically, I'm putting it at the very top of my program. So I run that first, and then I go ahead and create my data set. So let's take a look at what happens when we run this code where we have one format statement within the data step. And here we have one format within the data step. So again, in our output, we are seeing that the value labels are attached to our variables. So for gender, for race, for mother's age, for child num, we see the label for socioeconomic status. And then in our means procedure, we see the labels shown and the value labels for gender. So again, you can choose, you can put your formats within the procedures, or you can have one format statement that's in your data step. This completes the SAS demonstration formats.